Saturday. Gonna go over conference play preview for college basketball as well as a bowl game preview for college football, and then gonna go over the burning question from last week, not the one that I just posted, but the one that you give the Mount Rushmore of your respective college football teams. And then gotta go over the Chiefs too, and that's it really. So drafting this night is gonna be a short one. I feel like I always say that, and then it ends up being like an hour. But there's no topics that I really like want to rant on with these ones. So strap in, sit tight. If I miss anything, I will let you guys condemn me in the comments and let me know. But as far as I know, really all the sports teams we have. So jump into it. All three local teams have looked better, have looked worse. KU let's just start with the big one, KU. KU finished off their non-conference strong with a big win over Wichita State. They looked probably the most complete that they've looked this entire non-conference slate, which is good. Hunter Dickinson didn't look softer than Charmin toilet paper. You know, Marco Jackson was hitting his shots. He looked really, really good. And just the bench actually produced. So that's about as much as you can ask for this KU team. And you hope it translates to the regular season, or excuse me, the conference season. KU starts their conference slate off with TCU. TCU right now, obviously they have former Jayhawk Ernest Uday, who I believe kind of just rides their bench. He did have a career high though, of 15 points this past, I think it was a week ago. Or actually this past Saturday, excuse me. So that's certainly something to keep an eye on. TCU's starting five basically consists of. We have a look here. Just a second. Their starting five really consists of Miller, Coles, PV, Nelson, and Anderson. Do with that information what you will. I really don't keep up with TCU basketball all that well, so apologies. They are 11-2 though, which is something to look at. Their two losses came against Nevada, which isn't a horrible loss. You probably would have liked to have won that if you're TCU, though. They ended up losing by 13 against a Nevada team that really hasn't done a whole lot in the past couple of years. And then their second loss came against Clemson, which is currently ranked 24th. So not bad. I mean, they're definitely not a team to overlook. I mean, they are 11-2. KU right now has a 72.6% chance of winning. Emmanuel Miller is probably the guy to watch out for. He's their points and rebounds leader. and then Micah Peavy is their assists leader. So Emmanuel Miller is probably the guy to watch out for, and he's probably going to match up well against like Hunter Dickinson, and the forwards KJ Adams as well. So I I I like KU's odds to open up on a high note. Um, After TCU, they go to UCF for a contest. They host Oklahoma, which will be a big game. Oklahoma's ranked number 11 right now. I think they're kind of a fraudulent number 11, but we'll just have to see. Um, Obviously, KU has been playing to opponent levels as of recent, so um, you hope that ceases and KU can recognize that you were the preseason number one for a reason. Then you go to West Virginia, host Cincinnati, go to Iowa State, host Oklahoma State, um, and then your next big one. I mean, Iowa State's kind of a big one, and Cincinnati's definitely no slouch this year either. My preseason Big 12 rankings are not looking the best. But c'est la vie. Big 12 is always a dogfight. Um, the game to open February though is probably the game to watch. February honestly is a huge slate for KU. KU has to figure it out by February because you've got Houston to open the month. You're hosting Houston. I'm hopefully going to be at that game. Then you got K State the following week. You're going to Bramlage for that. You got Baylor hosting Baylor, going to Texas Tech, going to Oklahoma, hosting Texas, and hosting BYU. Um, all but two of those matches are against current ranked teams right now. K State's 10-3, and Texas Tech is 11-2 right now. Those are the only two unranked teams out of that slate currently. Uh, so February is going to be a really, really big month for the Jayhawks. As for Kansas State is opening their conference play with UCF. I could think of worse ways to open the conference with. UCF is still 9-3. There's 3 losses coming to. Let's see here. Ole Miss, which no slouch, but certainly not like a blue blood or anything like that. Stetson, and Miami. So, definitely a good start off point for the Wildcats. I think the Cats will be at home. It'll be the conference opener. Bramlage will hopefully be packed. We'll see, but uh, I think K State matches up really well with this UCF team, and they should handle business pretty well. Obviously, K State's losses, excuse me. They only won by 7 against Chicago State. I didn't think Chicago State was all that great, but nonetheless, they beat Wichita State by 9. They got crushed though by Nebraska, which Nebraska is currently 9-2. So same, or excuse me, hold on. What record are they? They are. Sorry. So Nebraska is currently 11-2. So one game ahead of the Wildcats. You know, Nebraska looks really good this year, but in years past they have not looked all that great. And then of course you had the 2 buzzer beaters against North Alabama and Villanova. Obviously, Jay Wright's not there anymore, so Villanova's kind of on the downhill. And then Miami you lost to, and USC lost to. So K State has the more quality losses. I would say, than UCF does. Um, but it's still going to be. I feel like it's going to be a tight contest. UCF's supposed to finish last in the Big 12 this year. They don't have all that much talent, but I mean, they're 9-3 still. They may still give the Wildcats a contest. We saw what North Alabama did in Bramlage, so hopefully Jerome Tang and company has learned from their mistakes, but we'll just have to see because uh, after UCF, you got to go to West Virginia. You got a game against Tech at Tech, and then you play Baylor at Bramlage. Eh, That's going to be a tough one. West Virginia and Texas Tech aren't going to be slouches either. West Virginia, is having a down year. Obviously, Coach Huggins was fired. Everybody's leaving in the portal, and they're kind of having a down year. But I mean, they've competed. They're still not horrible. Um, and then Texas Tech is 11-2, and we know what Tech can do. Uh, so I would say if you can win your next three, you'll be in a good spot to play Baylor. But if you drop one or two of these, or worst case scenario, even all three, you're setting yourself up for some pretty bad stuff when you come to Baylor, or when Baylor comes to town, I should say. Because then you have Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State's fine. They're not great. They're fine. You got Iowa State. You got Houston, and then you got Oklahoma. So that's a big 3-game stretch. A really big 5-game stretch. Um, because you got to go to Oklahoma State to open up February, and then you face KU, then you face BYU, and then TCU, Texas, BYU, and then West Virginia. So it's gonna be a tough road for the Cats. Um, it'll be interesting to see what they do with it. Um, I don't. Their non-conference really didn't impress me all that much. They did fine. They certainly could have done better. But here's what it is, you know. So we'll have to see how they end up performing because I really can't get a beat on this K State team, especially after Naquan Tomlin's uh, departure, which he's doing really well in Memphis, by the way. If you're not keeping up with that, but let's move on to Missouri. Missouri again is another team that I just don't know what to think of because they have so currently let's just start out with this. Currently they're 8-5. Not how Missouri wanted to start. I'll just say that right now. Not how Missouri wanted to start. Missouri, uh, if you're Missouri, you wanted to be in a great spot coming out of non-conference. I mean, yeah, it was a tough slate. I mean, obviously you have teams like Kansas, you have teams like Illinois, Seton Hall's no slouch, but and the Memphis too. Memphis is decent, but going 8-5 instead of like 10-3, 11-2, something along those lines. Honestly, the expectation was probably 11-2 because let's look back at this. You went against Arkansas Pine Bluff. Nope. Yeah, that was a gimme. Arkansas Pine Bluff hasn't been good at athletics in a long time. Um, and then you go to Memphis, or Memphis comes to you, and you drop that by 15. I get that Memphis is no slouch, but you can't you can't drop the game versus Memphis. You just can't. If you expect to be top 3 in the SEC this year, that has to be a gimme. Memphis is good this year, and I think I underrated them a little bit. Um, when looking at them and saying like, oh yeah, Missouri should have no problem with this team. Well, they did. And then, you get good revenge by beating SIUE. Is that SIU Evansville? I think is what they are. Southern Illinois, Evansville, I want to say. I really don't know. Um, that one stumped me, but you beat them by 18. And then you beat Minnesota by 2. Minnesota's a decent win. Um, they're better at football, but still a decent win. And then you lose to Jackson State, a Ken Palm, not even a Ken Palm top 150 team. I don't even think they're in the Ken Palm 300, and you drop that one. That's embarrassing. That's horrible. Yeah, and yeah, you bounce back by beating the crap out of SC State, but then Loyola keeps with you. Pitt keeps with you, which Pitt's honestly a decent win. Pitt's honestly your best win in November, I would say, um, because they're not bad. Uh, you beat Wichita State by 10, and you keep with Kansas, so you recovered a little bit from that just embarrassing loss. You only lost to Kansas by 9. That says a little bit. As a Kansas fan, that says a little bit. The fact that you couldn't keep the double-digit lead is pretty embarrassing, though, because I think Missouri was up as much as 13 and just threw it away in the second half. Then you go get beat by Seton Hall. Then you go get beat. You get dog walked by Illinois. They beat you by 24. Isn't that supposed to be a rivalry game? Didn't you beat them? Didn't you beat on them last year? I would say they got revenge. And then, closing out non-con play with a drubbing of Central Arkansas. Congrats. Well, you got to go face Georgia in the opener of your conference. Georgia's no slouch. Georgia is 10-3 right now. Georgia, their non-conference slate, I'm looking at it now. It's not great. Their best win is, gosh, probably Florida State. Yeah, Florida State. The rest is pretty weak. This is a team that you should beat. If you want to be in the top echelon of SEC basketball, you beat Georgia. And after that, you got Kentucky. So probably best to beat Georgia if you don't want to go 0-2 in the conference to start out your year. Because you got South Carolina after that. South Carolina is currently 12-1. And I'm pretty sure they had a pretty weak non-conference. Because South Carolina is not supposed to be good this year. Yeah, their only losses against Clemson, and their best win is, I would say, Notre Dame or Virginia Tech. So SEC, or excuse me, ACC, but not good ACC. And you got Alabama. Alabama's having a down year. Florida should be a yeah. When Florida comes to town, that's a good one to watch. Texas A&M, South Carolina again, and then you face Arkansas. Your fierce rivals in Arkansas. Arkansas is not as good as they were last year, but they're still no slouch. And then the rest of these honestly should be pretty. This is a winnable schedule for Missouri. I'll say that. I'll say that if Missouri doesn't win more than 20 games this season, they should be immensely disappointed. Because frankly speaking, that's a conference slate where you should win more than 20 games. But it's not a guarantee. Missouri has looked so incredibly inconsistent and has hung with some very, very good teams, i.e., Kansas, and then just completely crap the bed against teams that aren't even in the KenPom top 300, like Jackson State. So, again, it's tough to get a read on this team. Um, they've got some good players that need to stay out of trouble if they want to play, i.e., Caleb Grill, but good players and a solid culture under Dennis Gates. So, again, I think there is zero reason why they shouldn't win more than 20 games this season and be tournament eligible. But that's just me. Moving on to college football. Okay, so hey, y'all. I screwed up a little and recognize that I had already talked about the burning question that I had mentioned earlier, the Mount Rushmore of local college programs. Um, I will probably talk about next week's burning question in the next show, or the one that I asked yesterday. I apologize for that little snafu, but there's not going to be a burning question for this show. So, bit of a disclaimer here. Notice my camera's off. I'm filming this after I had gotten done filming everything else. So I sincerely apologize for that. Hopefully y'all can forgive me. But yeah, just I'll see you all next week and enjoy the rest of the show. Okay, onward to college football. Uh, this week's, well, technically this coming week's burning question was about college football. If you haven't answered that, go check out either the TikTok or the Facebook page or just the article in general. I believe the Twitter poll and Twitter question, or yeah, Twitter poll. It was a poll. Sorry, the Twitter and Instagram ones have expired. You can still comment, but those are my three suggestions if you want to still get a word in. Um, and they're all under the Burn KC. So just go give that go give can't talk today. Go give that a once over and let me know what you think. I will answer that burning question and review your guys' answers um, in the upcoming ScorchCast. Probably will be on Sunday at the latest, Wednesday. So I'll let you all know. But bowl games. All three local teams played in the bowl games or during bowl season, I should say. Um, this past month or so, and all three teams won their bowl games. First time in a long, long time that that's happened. So congrats to all three local programs. All three of them earned it. I would say they all had pretty decent seasons at worst. Uh, but you look at the seasons that Missouri and Kansas had, um, and the only reason I don't say Kansas State is because a lot of Kansas Staters were saying we're going to win the Big 12 title this year, and then it turns out that Will Howard was a fraudulent quarterback. I understand that they beat Kansas. Kansas had a third string quarterback, and Kansas led for most of that game. You guys caught some pretty lucky break. I'll just say that. But I digress. Let's talk about the positives. Let's not bring rivalry into this. I apologize. But let's talk about Kansas first and their guaranteed rate bowl win, because this one's going to be the longest one. Um, my sincere apologies for ending that live broadcast early. If you caught any of it, it's since been taken off. Don't worry. Um, if you caught any of it though, I apologize for any language that I may have used. I apologize for my lack of professionalism, I should say. Um, when watching that game, but I mean, if you watched that game and you're a Kansas fan like I am, or even if you're not, you had to be frustrated with the complete lack of effort and care put into the production value, the the ref show that was going on, and just the overall unwatchability. I mean, that was a 3-hour game that took like 4.5 hours because the referees couldn't stop putting the flag down. And the broadcast never reviewed it, so really the public couldn't make a judgment. So that tells me that that referee crew may not have been the best in the whole wide world. Maybe there were calls that were reserved, or that were deserved. Excuse me, not reserved, but deserved. Maybe there were, but I mean, it was unwatchable. There was like a flag every other play, and having to listen to these commentators that have no idea what they are talking about, no idea, and they're they're plain. They were plain as saltines. I mean, it was so boring. At least the game was fun, but like the commentary was just so bland, and and then the ref show. I'm glad KU won, and I'm gonna start to focus on the actual play here. But I just needed to get that out of the way. That's the whole reason I stopped live streaming, was because I was immensely frustrated with what was going on with the overall production of that bowl game. I mean, it was infuriating. So, um, getting into the actual play, uh, Jim Zabrowski let Jason Bean sling it. I mean, he was just throwing balls back and forth down the field to wide receivers that would just go up and get it. Take notes, Chiefs. And Lawrence Arnold had 3 touchdowns. Luke Grimm had 3 touchdowns. Quentin Skinner had some amazing plays. And just overall, it showed how dynamic this KU offense is. And the fact that basically, I think it's like 8 out of 11 starters are returning next year. This KU team is making a good case for a Big 12 title in in a new look Big 12 that is going to be a very competitive league. And if you were to tell me that if you were to tell me 3 years ago that KU would be even competitive in the Big 12, I would have laughed in your face. The job that Lance Leipold has done there is insane, and he deserves a pay raise, and I hope he gets it. Kudos to Jason Bean for finishing out his college career on a high note. It was a great redemption story compared to, last year's Liberty Bowl. Um, he threw 6 touchdowns, threw for a bowl season leading 449 yards. I mean, he impressed a ton. And I get it. Oh, it's against UNLV. UNLV was picked to finish last in the Mountain West. and they ended up going to the Mountain West Championship. Yeah, they lost against a pretty good Boise State team, a historically good Boise State team. But you know, that's winning against UNLV this year is a feat because they have a great freshman quarterback, or I should say had. He's since transferred. I had heard that he was going to transfer, and I thought he already did. That's why in my original iteration of my preview for the Guaranteed Rate Bowl, I had said that they're going to be without Mayava, but apparently Mayava came back for the bowl game. So, but he's guaranteed transfer now. He's entered the portal, and just overall, I mean, just a really good performance that got watered down by just terrible production value and terrible refereeing. So it stinks, but it is what it is. As for Kansas State, they got to eat a mascot. I say that's pretty cool. um, but as far as like the actual performance of the game goes, Avery Johnson looked decent. I mean, not like super duper impressive, but I mean, he ran for a decent chunk of yardage and was definitely, had some big throws. Um, but overall, he was fine. I think DJ Giddens was the way more impressive player in that game offensively. Um, but you know, there's something to be said for having a dynamic passing and run game from your quarterback against one of the nation's top defenses. So definitely a good performance. Um, was it a statement? Not really. I would say. It was a good performance, but it wasn't like oh my gosh, this guy's winning Big 12 Offensive Player of the Year. He's going to win the Heisman, et cetera, et cetera. Like K State fans are trying to make that narrative fact. It's not, but but overall, not a bad performance from the Wildcats. Definitely well deserved for guys like Cooper Beebe, and the other seniors. And you know, when your roster is that depleted from the transfer portal, it definitely says something to beat a team like NC State. So I think that's a very very solid win. Um, let's talk about the Missouri game. I about fell asleep multiple times throughout this game. This was the most boring football game, one of the most boring football games that I've ever watched. It- I mean, oh my gosh, neither offense could do anything until late in the fourth when Missouri was finally like, oh man, we have one of the most dynamic offenses in the NCAA. Let's start using it. And, yeah, Ohio State's defense is spectacular. It's arguably the best in the NCAA. But, gosh, it should not have taken 3.5 quarters for them to get going. I mean, it straight up shouldn't have. Cody Schrader had a pretty good game. I thought he should have won Offensive Player of the Game. I guess they thought otherwise because Brady Cook ended up getting selected for that. I think that's dumb. I think that's just selling out because he's the quarterback, and quarterback is automatically the offensive player of the game if the team wins. And I guess they had no one else to choose from, even though Cody Schrader had I can't remember what did he have for yards per carry because it wasn't bad. Let me look because I remember it being like above 4, which for a running back between 4 and 5 is good. Anything higher than that is pretty pretty good. Great, even was the word that I was looking for. Well, let's look at the box score real quick. Let's see here. Cody Schrader had 4.4 yards per carry and a touchdown off of 29 carries for 128 yards. Not bad. Brady Cook had like 100 yards passing, which with that wide receiver group is pitiful. There's Missouri should have Missouri should have started throwing it in the first quarter, and they didn't, and it was ridiculous. They didn't want to test this Ohio State secondary at all. Yeah, I get it. They're like the best in the nation, but that's you have to account for the level of competition that they had. And in the Big 10, really the only passing team in the Big 10, and this is being generous, is Michigan. And Michigan beat on them through the air. So I don't get the logic there. I mean, you came away with the win. Great job. Drinkwitz probably guaranteed a contract extension. In fact, he did. He's extended through 2028. So, I sure, cool. Congrats. You know, just did you really have to put up such a snoozer? you know, at least Luther Bird scored, or else he may have transferred. But again, congrats to all three local programs for winning the bowl games. You made the KC area very proud. And let's get into our NFL team, the Chiefs. This might be a fun one. Okay, to start off the Chiefs, let's start with something good. Most of this is going to be good. There's not a whole lot of negative that I gotta say, but the negative that I have to say um, is a pretty substantial negative. So there are currently 5 Chiefs selected for the Pro Bowl. This happened as of 9 minutes ago, by the way. We got Creed Humphrey, Travis Kelce, Patrick Mahomes, Chris Jones, and Joe Tooney. Those are the 5 Chiefs selected for the Pro Bowl. Congrats to them. Go be great if you participate, because hopefully the Chiefs will make the Super Bowl. We'll see if that happens. Um, but the Chiefs clinched the playoffs with this win over the Bengals. It was a great team win that looked pretty good. All things, excuse me, all things considered. There's still some kinks to work out. The major one being the wide receiver core. Rashee Rice looked very, very good. I think he is the clear-cut wide receiver one in his rookie year. If that is not a testament to how poorly this Chiefs wide receiver group has done this past year, I don't know what is. Probably the MBS drop that happened this past game as well. Because that's a catch a youth football player makes. That's a catch a high school receiver routinely makes. And he just let it drop. If MVS never sees the field for the Chiefs again, I don't think anybody in Chiefs Kingdom would care. In fact, I think a lot of people would celebrate, because that is the most. There's zero accountability with that guy. Zero. The man has not said once, unlike the rest of the receivers, which, yeah, it's a hollow promise, so at least he's honest, I guess. Actually, not really, because frankly, he's delusional. He's out here blaming Patrick Mahomes for a ball that he should have caught because it was thrown slightly behind him because he ran the wrong route. And then not too long after that, you drop another one that should have been a gimme touchdown, no less, if you just kept running. You leave your feet too much. I mean, there's no way that a wide receiver coach in the NFL is letting this slide, which is why I say it's a coaching issue. I don't think the Chiefs wide receiver coach, I forget his name. His last name starts with an Coach Embry. There we go. Sorry. Coach Embry is holding these guys accountable at all. I don't think Matt Nagy is holding these guys accountable at all. Otherwise, they would have gotten better. And that's why so many people want Eric Bieniemy back, was because, yeah, he didn't necessarily have play calling duties as the offensive coordinator. He kind of did. He kind of didn't. But he held guys accountable. He made sure that guys were, in fact, getting better. I don't think MBS is. I don't think Kadarius Toney is. I think they've reached their ceiling and are just tanking out. So it's time to completely revamp the wide receiver core. But here we are talking about potentially adding Frank Clark? In what world does that make sense? You know, there may not be that many good wide receiver free agents out there, but there's got to be at least one or two that are better than those jokers, aside from Rashee Rice. Justin Watson's been playing pretty well. I like Justin Watson. He's had a couple of bad drops this season, yeah, but he's probably the next most reliable guy. Justin Ross hasn't been tested all that much. We might see a lot more of him with this upcoming game, considering they're resting starters. I would hope so, at least. And if he impresses, then I fully expect him to take away snaps from MBS and Kadarius Toney. He should, at least. And yet, I'll go ahead and say this right now. This whole, there's the same thing happened in 2019, and look what happened to the Chiefs then, is not going to happen. That is a delusional take. That's not a realist take. The Chiefs had the weapons that they needed back then. They just didn't know how to use them. And they just fell on hard times because there were injuries that happened. Patrick Mahomes' confidence was shaken because his offensive line was getting beat up. 2020 was not the only reason why Brett Veach completely replaced the offensive line after that year. It needed doing before that. It still wasn't that great of an offensive line in 2019. And then you look at the defense, too. The defense was fine. They definitely hit their stride in the playoffs. But they were riddled with injuries and had probably the worst linebacking core in the league. So my point being is this. This situation's different. Yes, the defense is playing out of their minds, and you love that. But the offensive line is underperforming. Specifically the tackles. So you hope that Jawan Taylor can go back to his 2022 form, and then you hope that Wanye Morris figures it out, or potentially Donovan Smith. I mean, I'm glad he's sitting because he was terrible, and Wanye Morris wasn't terrible. He had some pretty bad reps, don't get me wrong, but he's a rookie. It's going to happen. He's still outperforming Donovan Smith. So I have a hard time pinning down what exactly is going to happen to the Chiefs in the playoffs. If you end up facing Houston, Pittsburgh, or even the Dolphins, I think that's a W in that first round. I think that's a W. If you end up facing Buffalo, I hate to say it, but I don't think the Chiefs are beating Buffalo. So I think you have to hope and pray. The ideal first round playoff opponent is the Steelers. The Steelers have a great defense. Don't get me wrong. That defense is going to be tough to get through. TJ Watt is going to have to be held a lot, which means a bunch of flags. And they don't have half bad of a pass defense either. So, really, the only. I'm not even sure if are the Steelers the most ideal? This may be a burning question, actually. I might ask this after I put up the ScorchCast. This may be a double burning question week. Because I honestly don't know who the ideal first round playoff opponent is. It's not the Bills, I'll say that right now. The Bills are gonna slack us if they play us again because they're hitting their stride. They have a great defense, one of the best in the league. Their offense has found ways to beat our defense, as seen by the regular season matchup. And overall, it's just a bad matchup. There's a chance there, like there was in the regular season, but I just don't see the Chiefs getting past the Bills if it's in a playoff setting. And yeah, it's going to be at Arrowhead, but can the offense pull their head out of their butt in order to get past this juggernaut defense? My opinion is no. So I look to the Dolphins, which have a great offense, but a pretty beat up defense. So that works well in the Chiefs' favor. To be honest, I think it's the Dolphins that are the best matchup for the Chiefs. I think that has the potential for that has the most potential for a Chiefs victory. Pittsburgh would probably be well, actually, Houston would probably be the next best option. Houston has a good offense, but if CJ Stroud is put under pressure, he crumbles. He's a rookie. He's a great quarterback, don't get me wrong, but he's still a rookie. So if you put pressure on Stroud, you win the game. And then you got the Steelers, who, while they have a completely inept offense, they seem to be finding their stride with Mason Rudolph and George Pickens finally getting the ball. My dad. By the way, thank you, George Pickens, for winning my fantasy championship. I am forever indebted to you. I digress. But just this is probably the first time I am very, very worried for the Chiefs in the playoffs. I I don't see the Chiefs making it to the AFC Championship. I'll just say that right now. I think there's way too many good defenses in this division, or excuse me, in this conference, for the Chiefs to get past, for this Chiefs offense to get past. The Browns would kill us. The Ravens would probably kill us. And the Bills would kill us. In my opinion, at least. I don't know about any of y'all, but the Browns have the number one defense in the NFL right now for good reason. They're really, really good. And they get pressure on they would get pressure on Mahomes like no other team would, which would force even worse throws to the league's worst wide receiving core. So I don't like our odds. And then, of course, with the Ravens, you got Lamar Jackson, and their defense is definitely no slouch either. But it would be very, very hard to keep up with that Ravens team, especially with how badly they've been beating teams like the Dolphins and the Niners too. They slacked the Niners, and they're hitting their stride. So I think the Ravens are a very dangerous team. But overall, this whole talk about the Chiefs are gonna find their stride in the playoffs. I believe, I believe. It's a nice thought, but it's unrealistic. I think this is just going to be a down year for the Chiefs, and Veach overcorrects next year. It happens to franchises. Brady never had a down year. Yes, he did. Yes, he did. Multiple times he did. Don't don't give me that crap. But I will say that this is a waste of one of Mahomes' prime years, one of Mahomes's prime years. So that's unfortunate. But Chiefs will be back. I believe Veach will overcorrect hard with the wide receiver position, and the Chiefs will find their stride again. I don't think it'll be this year. I don't think the Chiefs sniff the Super Bowl this year. Um, but stranger things have happened. But that's just my honest opinion. Um, that's our show, though. Thank you so much for joining me. Let me know if there's any sports news that I missed that you want me to talk about. But for the time being, this has been the Burn KC ScorchCast and Alex Blackburn signing off. Have a great night, and I hope you enjoyed the show.